Now for the moment I'm sure you've all been looking forward to. A look at the newest member of the Ford family of fine cars, the Edsel. Edsel, the car that is already making automotive history for Ford Motor Company.
I actually remember them when I was growing up. My dad was interested in getting one at one time, but unfortunately they discontinued it before he got into the market for a new car and ended up with a 1960 Mercury instead.
Ever since I was young, I've always been obsessed with vintage cars. It might have stemmed from having a bunch of old car stuff around our house, but the Edsel is such a unique and interesting and beautiful car that who wouldn't love it?
A new and different car in every respect, yet with a classical element of conservatism in its styling, which will give it maximum appeal.
We're just car collectors. My brother and I have always been car collectors.
I wasn't even in an Edsel club. I was in the Studebaker club.
Oh, I have a 55 Thunderbird, I have a 56 Thunderbird, I have a 57 Ford Sunliner, that's a convertible.
I got two of them in 1983. Both of them were in very bad shape.
My first car was a 59 Ford and I still have it. Well, I can restore a 59 Edsel to basically the same car.
When I seen the two Edsels for free, I fell in love with them.
This is a 58 Pacer that belonged to a man named Edsel Ford. Megan wanted an Edsel for her graduation gift. So we flew up to Oakland, California with Mark Weaver and looked at the car, and we loved it, but we thought we'd look around and see if we could find, to make sure this was the right car. We looked around, we couldn't find anything, so we traveled up to Oakland again and looked at the car, and we decided to buy it. And
I begged her.
Right after we bought it, Mr. Ford died. So we would not have this car if we hadn't gone up there.
The right front on this got was totaled. It had mice on the interior. You eat out the interior, broken window.
It was kind of a derelict car that sat out in Wilmington.
It's in pretty good shape, actually. It was out in Barstow, California, out in the middle of the desert.
This model is pretty close to a Ford, mechanically.
I can go down to any auto parts store and buy.
59s aren't too difficult because they're the same as pretty much the same as a 59 Ford.
I mean, I just did the engine on this probably about 2 years ago, and I had no problem with any of the parts for the engine.
Well, it needed everything. All interiors new and of course had to be repainted, but the body was straight and not a lot of rust.
We had a wrecking yard in Baldwin Park. Dennis Irving was a real good sponsor of the car. He had lots of parts. Half the yard was full of Edsels. So most of us that joined early on got parts from Dennis.
Some cosmetic parts come very dearly. These grills here, they come dearly because a majority of them now are cracked. They're so badly pitted with hot metal hits.
Man loved it. This was his baby. He owned about 13 or 15 Edsel. Sold all of them, and he wanted to give this to his grandson, but his grandson didn't want it. And we came along, and I think because he knew who my father was, he was willing to give it to us.
No problems. None of the cars we have.
Of all my cars and all the clubs, we've had the most fun with this particular club because they're not afraid to get out and drive their cars.
All the cars that you see here went to Laughlin last month, and we drove them all out to Laughlin.
I've been to Oregon 4 times to regional meets and national meets. We've been to Las Vegas a half a dozen times. Now we go to Laughlin. And it's just, you can jump in this car and drive it, and you carry some of the basic parts that you think you might need. And I've never really broke down on the road with it, to where, we couldn't get it going, of course.
It's hard to drive because it has push-button gear.
And then he came out with new mechanical things such as the Tel-Touch, which is an automatic push-button.
This is our Teletouch transmission control. You can drive the Edsel, park it, and reverse it with ease. A flick of the Teletouch button makes an electrical contact, and a motor engages the transmission.
The early years of the 58, they had problems with the TeleTouch, getting the mechanism under there, and it kind of screwed up the transmission. Edsel did iron out the problem later on in the year, but at that time it got the reputation.
The cars in this era had fins, and they were getting away from them. They called this the flight deck design.
And they come out with other innovations. It was just a little too ahead of its time.
We interviewed with Jim Arnold. He showed up at our national meet. He's one of the designers. He was involved with the interior.
This instrument cluster follows the most advanced automotive developments. We've placed all instrument switches and warning signals for convenience and visibility. In place of the old-fashioned knobs, you select the climate you want with a twist of the wrist. These visual reminders help you watch oil pressure, fuel level, oil level, and engine temperature. They also tell whether the generator is charging and whether the emergency brake is off. Preset this dial at the speed you want. When you exceed this speed, the speedometer dial lights up red in warning.
You may think I'm fooling, foolish things I do. You may wonder how come I love you when you get on my nerves like you do. Well, you know that you bug me. There ain't no secret about that. But come on over here and hug me. Baby, I'll spill the facts. Well, honey, it ain't your money. 'Cause baby, I got plenty of that. I love you for your pink Cadillac, crushed leather seats, riding in the back, cruising down the street, waving to the girls, healing on the side, spending all the money on a Saturday night. Honey, I just wonder what you do there in the back of your pink Cadillac, pink Cadillac. Well, now way back in the Bible, temptations always come along. There's always somebody tempting somebody into doing something they know is wrong. Well, they tempt you, man, with silver. Yeah, they tempt you, sir, with gold. And they tempt you with the pleasure that the flesh does show the cold. Well, they say you tempted at a winning apple. But man, I ain't going for that. I know it was a pink Cadillac, crushed leather seats, riding in the back, oozing down the street, waving to the girls, healing on the side, spending all the money on a Saturday night. Honey, I just wonder what it feels like in the back of your pink Cadillac, pink Cadillac.
I'll put it in the laundry room.
The feeling will blow it away.
Okay, so.
Go put it on the front table.
Well, now some folks say it's too big, uses too much gas. Some folks say it's too old, that it goes